"We didn't order for your son," my sister said, sliding the bread basket across the table like she was doing me a favor, while her kids tore into $100 steaks and triple-layer chocolate cake. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. That night still burns in my memory. My sister, Renee, had invited me and my 8-year-old son, Eli, to dinner at a high-end steakhouse in downtown Dallas. I thought it was her way of reconnecting after months of silence. Renee always lived in a different world: designer clothes, country club memberships, a husband who drove a new truck every year. I showed up in my best thrift store dress, proud that at least it was clean and pressed. When we arrived, her husband Marshall gave me that polite half-smile rich people wear when they don't want to be rude, but still want you to know you don't belong. Their kids, Chloe and Ben, sat there with iPads, waiting for the waiter to bring their food. Eli leaned close to me and whispered, "Mom, what are we getting?" His eyes were full of hope. Before I could answer, Renee waved her manicured hand and said, "Oh, we didn't order for you too. I wasn't sure what you'd want, so I just asked for some bread and butter." She said it like she was being thoughtful. Then she pushed the basket across the table toward my son. I felt my face burn. The waiter set down 2 steaming steaks, sides, and a dessert tray for her kids. The smell of garlic butter filled the air. Eli tried to hide his disappointment, tearing a piece of bread like it was a full meal. Renee smiled at me. "You know how kids are, they're so picky." I figured it was safer this way. I wanted to scream. Instead, I forced a smile and said, "That's fine." But inside, something cracked. As they laughed about their vacation plans to Aspen, Eli asked me in a small voice, "Did I do something wrong?" My heart broke. I told him no, that Aunt Renee was just being careful with orders. But I saw in his eyes that he didn't believe me. Renee spent the rest of dinner bragging about her house, her car, her children's private school. I barely tasted anything. My stomach churned as I watched her family eat like royalty while my son sat quiet and hungry. When the check came, she looked at me with a sweet smile and said, "You don't have to worry about this. We've got it." As if I should thank her. That night, after I tucked Eli into bed, I sat alone in the dark, shaking with anger. I had spent my life defending my sister, making excuses for her coldness. But something changed in me that night. She didn't just humiliate me. She humiliated my child. And that's the moment I decided she'd never get the chance to look down on us again. That dinner wasn't the end. It was the beginning. That night after the dinner, I couldn't sleep. The silence in my small apartment pressed against me. Eli's soft breathing came from the next room, but my mind was somewhere else, far back in the house where Renee and I grew up. We were raised in a small town in Oklahoma, in a 2-bedroom house with cracked floors and a roof that always leaked in the spring. Mom worked double shifts at the diner, and Dad fixed cars behind the shed. From the start, Renee was the one everyone looked at. Blonde curls, bright smile, straight A's. Teachers loved her, neighbors praised her, and Mom called her our shining girl. Me? I was the quiet one, the one who brought home secondhand trophies and late report cards because I had to work at 16 to help pay for groceries. I remember coming home from my part-time job one evening and seeing Renee in a new dress. Mom said it was a reward for her good grades. I asked where mine was, and Mom just said, "You know we can't afford to." It was always like that. Renee got praise. I got responsibilities. She learned piano, and I learned how to stretch a dollar. She dreamed about college in the city. I figured out how to fix the washing machine when it broke. When Dad got sick, I stayed home to take care of him. Renee said she was too emotional to handle hospital. After he passed, she left town for good, chasing her big life while I stayed behind with the bills. Years later, she returned with Marshall, loud, polished, proud. He wore success like armor. Every conversation with him was a gentle reminder that he was doing better than me. He'd ask, "So, Lena, still in that little rental? Or maybe one day you'll find someone who can take care of you." Always with that grin that looked friendly to strangers but carried a sting meant only for me. I tried to brush it off, but the truth was it hurt. It hurt more because I remembered the girl who used to sleep next to me on the same worn-out mattress, whispering dreams about being rich one day. Now she looked at me like I was dirt she'd stepped over to get there. A few nights after that dinner, Eli asked me, "Mom, why doesn't Aunt Renee like me?" I froze. My throat tightened, but I couldn't let him see me cry. "She does, sweetheart," I said softly. "She just doesn't know how to show it." He looked at me, searching my face. But she looked at me like I didn't belong there. I kissed his forehead and told him to sleep, but his words cut deep. He had seen it too, the divide, the quiet cruelty that even a child could recognize. After he fell asleep, I sat by the window, watching the streetlights flicker. Every memory of our childhood came back, sharper than before. The favoritism, the indifference, the way I'd always forgiven her because that's what good sisters were supposed to do. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I wasn't the quiet one who took the scraps. Renee had thrown salt on every wound she'd ever given me. And for the first time in my life, I felt the sting, and I didn't look away. It was a rainy afternoon when that old memory returned, the one I had tried to bury years ago. I was sorting bills at the kitchen table when I came across an old envelope with Renee's handwriting on it, neat, perfect cursive that hadn't changed since high school. Inside was a faded receipt, dated 8 years ago, with my signature and hers. Seeing it pulled me back to a time when I still believed family meant something. Back then, she and Marshall were struggling. His construction company had hit a dry spell, and they were behind on their mortgage. Renee had called me one night, her voice trembling. "Lena, I wouldn't ask if it weren't serious," she'd said. "We're going to lose the house." I didn't think twice. I had some savings, not much, just what I'd built from working double shifts at the diner, but I gave her $5,000. I remember wiring the money that same night, hands shaking but heart full. She promised, "I'll pay you back in 6 months, I swear. You're saving us." 6 months turned into a year, then 2. When I finally asked her about it, she laughed like I was being dramatic. "Oh, come on, Lena. It wasn't a loan. You offered to help. Don't make it sound like a business deal." The way she said it, light and breezy, made me feel small, like I'd imagined the whole thing. I let it go because arguing with Renee was like shouting into a mirror that only showed her side. But the worst part came later. At a family barbecue, I overheard her talking to one of Marshall's friends. "Lena was struggling so badly," she said, voice dripping with pity. "We helped her get back on her feet years ago. She doesn't like to talk about it, bless her heart." I stood frozen by the grill, tongs in hand. "Help me." My chest tightened. She had turned my kindness into her own story of generosity, and everyone believed her. Why wouldn't they? She had money, style, confidence. I had grease stains and secondhand shoes. That night, I dug through my old files until I found proof: the bank transfer, the emails, her signature. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about what she'd stolen from me, the truth. Eli came into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes. "Mom, why are you still up?" I smiled weakly. "Just cleaning up." I didn't want him to see the papers spread across the table or the tears I was trying to hide. As he went back to bed, I stared at that receipt, my name beside hers. I remembered how proud I'd been to help her, how sure I was that she'd do the same for me one day. But Renee didn't just forget. She erased me from her story and wrote herself as the savior. That realization cut deeper than any insult. It wasn't about a loan anymore. It was about respect, the kind she'd never intended to give. And for the first time, I knew the truth. She'd built her perfect life on my silence. The phone rang late on a Thursday morning while I was frosting cupcakes for a small wedding order. Renee's name flashed across the screen. For a moment, I thought about letting it go to voicemail, but curiosity got the better of me. "Lena, just the person I wanted to talk to," she said, her tone sugary and bright, the kind she used when she wanted something. I wiped my hands on a towel and tried to sound neutral. "What's going on, Renee?" "Oh, nothing urgent," she began, stretching out her words like she was easing into bad news. "I'm organizing a charity gala for the Children's Foundation next month. It's going to be huge. Sponsors, press, the mayor might even come." She paused dramatically. "And I thought of you." "Me?" I said slowly. "Yes. You do catering now, right? I told Marshall it would be perfect if you handled the food. You'd get amazing exposure, and it would help you build your little business." I could almost hear the smirk in her voice. My little business. The same business she once told people was cute, for someone with limited experience. I asked, "So, what's the budget?" She laughed softly. "Oh, come on, it's for charity. I'm sure you can manage something affordable. Think of it as giving back." My grip tightened on the phone, but I kept my voice even. "Sure, Renee. I'd love to help." She sounded relieved. "Perfect. I knew you'd say yes. I'll email you the details. And Lena, try to keep it elegant, okay? We don't want it looking too homemade." After we hung up, I stood there in the kitchen, staring at the flour-dusted counter. Elegant but affordable. She wanted me to decorate her empire for pennies, just so she could shine in front of her guests. But something in her tone that day told me more. She didn't just want my help. She wanted to remind me of my place. That thought didn't sting the way it used to. It settled differently, heavier, colder. As I cleaned up, I imagined her face at that fancy gala. Perfect hair, practiced smile, surrounded by people who thought she was generosity itself. And I realized, maybe this was the moment I'd been waiting for. Not to beg for her respect, but to take back the power she'd stolen piece by piece over the years. When Eli came home from school, I helped him with homework and made dinner like always. But my mind was elsewhere, drawing quiet plans in the spaces between our words. I thought about suppliers I knew, contacts who owed me favors, details I could twist without raising suspicion. By the time I tucked him into bed, my plan had already started forming, soft as smoke, steady as breath. Renee wanted my help, and I'd give it. just not the way she expected. When she handed me that invitation, she thought she was pulling strings. She didn't know she'd just placed them in my hands. The next few weeks passed in a blur of phone calls, meetings, and endless lists. I played my part perfectly, the helpful sister eager to make Renee's big night unforgettable. Every time she called with a demand, I answered sweetly. Of course, Renee. Whatever you need. She believed me. Why wouldn't she? I'd spent a lifetime making her comfortable. She gave me access to her company's accounts for catering expenses. That's how I met Gareth Miller, the accountant. He was tall, quiet, and wore glasses that always slid down his nose. Unlike everyone else around Renee, he didn't act like she was royalty. When we met in her office, he shook my hand firmly and said, "You must be the sister she mentioned, the one doing all the real work." I smiled. Something like that. Over the next few days, we coordinated payments for suppliers and rentals. Gareth was careful with details, but sometimes, as he talked through the numbers, he let things slip. Small things. Late invoices. Missing receipts. Unfiled statements. At first, I didn't think much of it. Then one afternoon, as we reviewed catering deposits, he sighed and muttered, "If she doesn't fix these balances, the IRS will." My head snapped up. "Excuse me?" He looked flustered. "Forget I said that. It's just there are irregularities. Let's leave it at that." But my curiosity had already caught fire. That night, after everyone left, I stayed behind in the office under the excuse of finalizing menu costs. The files were right there, open spreadsheets, vendor lists, invoices marked paid, that didn't line up with the totals. I took photos quietly with my phone, careful not to touch a thing. Each number told a story. Fake donations. Overstated profits. Money funneled through shell vendors. It was all there, hidden beneath polished presentations and gold-embossed business cards. I started piecing it together. Her success wasn't success at all. It was a mask. Every designer dress, every expensive gala, every smug smile had been built on lies. The next morning, I brought coffee for Gareth and thanked him for his help. "You must see everything that goes on here," I said casually. He gave a tired laugh. "Too much sometimes. But it's not my job to question how she runs things. I just keep the books balanced." His eyes told me more than his words did. He knew something was wrong, but he wasn't the type to blow the whistle. I was. Back at home, I spread the papers across my kitchen table, the same place I'd once counted pennies for rent. Now I was counting something else, her mistakes. Each one was a crack in the empire she'd built by stepping on people like me. For the first time, I didn't feel powerless. I felt steady. Focused. I'd played her game long enough. Now it was my turn to write the rules. While Renee slept easy in her mansion, I stayed up under the soft hum of my kitchen light, building her downfall one number at a time. The gala was only a week away, and Renee was in full command mode. Every day brought a new demand, a new way to remind me of where she thought I stood. She'd sweep into the venue in her tailored suit, her perfume arriving seconds before her voice. "Lena, those tablecloths look cheap. You're not using that fabric, are you? Or, you should really learn how to dress for these events. You don't want people thinking you're staff." I smiled through it, kept my tone calm, my movements steady. She mistook my silence for weakness, the same mistake she'd always made. One afternoon, I brought Eli along while I finished some floral arrangements. He sat quietly in the corner, drawing in his sketchbook. Renee arrived with two of her assistants, all high heels and laughter. She barely glanced at him before turning to me. "Honestly, Lena, I don't know how you do it," she said, looking me up and down. "Raising a child alone? I'd lose my mind. Then again, not everyone's meant for marriage." Her assistants chuckled softly. I felt my chest tighten, but I kept arranging flowers, pretending her words didn't sting. Then she leaned closer, lowering her voice just enough for me to hear. "You know, Marshall and I were talking. It's a shame Eli doesn't go to a private school. Kids from public schools, well, they don't always end up with the best influences." I froze. Her words sliced through me, clean and cold. Before I could respond, Eli's pencil clattered to the floor. His eyes were wet, his small hands trembling. "Aunt Renee," he said softly, "I like my school." The room went silent. Renee looked startled, then forced a smile. "Oh, sweetheart, I didn't mean anything bad." But the damage was done. Eli stood up, holding back tears, and walked out the door before I could stop him. I found him sitting on the steps outside, shoulders shaking. "She doesn't like me, Mom," he whispered. "She thinks I'm not good enough." I pulled him close, my throat tightening. "Don't listen to her," I said, though my voice wavered. He nodded, but I saw the hurt in his eyes. That was the moment something inside me hardened beyond repair. I had tolerated her cruelty for years, convinced that staying quiet made me the better person. But seeing Eli's tears, seeing the shame she'd planted in him, that ended everything. That night, after putting him to bed, I sat alone in the kitchen, the same place where I'd once helped her with her first business plan. I looked at the photos I'd gathered, the files I'd copied, the evidence of everything she'd stolen and faked. I'd been careful before. Strategic. Patient. But now patience felt like surrender. She had built her empire on lies. And I was done letting her stand on me to keep it tall. The gala would go on as planned, her perfect evening, her shining stage. But when the lights came up, she wouldn't be standing in them. I would make sure of that. The night of the gala arrived crisp and cool, the city lights glinting off the tall glass windows of the event hall. Inside, everything shimmered, chandeliers glowing, champagne glasses catching the light, the air heavy with perfume and money. Guests in sleek tuxedos and sequined gowns drifted through the space, laughing softly, unaware of the storm waiting beneath the surface. I moved between tables, checking placements and floral arrangements, keeping my expression calm. To anyone watching, I was just the quiet caterer, efficient and invisible. But beneath that calm, every nerve in my body buzzed with purpose. My plan was set, every detail locked in place. Renee stood at the center of it all, radiant in her silver gown. She looked exactly how she wanted the world to see her, successful, generous, untouchable. Marshall hovered beside her, shaking hands, soaking in praise he hadn't earned. When she spotted me near the buffet, she smiled in that condescending way that used to make my stomach twist. "Lena, you actually pulled it together," she said, eyes sweeping over the room. "I'll admit, I doubted you could make it look this professional." I smiled back. "I do my best." She nodded, already turning away, her attention fixed on a group of donors. I watched her laugh, hand resting lightly on one man's arm, the picture of grace. Every laugh she gave was a lie. Every toast a performance. In my pocket, my phone buzzed. Right on time. The email queue I'd prepared was ready. I slipped behind the serving station, opened the message draft, and hit send. Dozens of attachments, spreadsheets, receipts, falsified tax documents, bank transfers, each one labeled with her company name. They were sent to every sponsor, donor, and reporter on her guest list, along with a quiet copy to the State Revenue Department. I took a deep breath, steadying my hands. The deed was done. Now it was only a matter of time. At the front of the room, the lights dimmed as Renee stepped onto the small stage, microphone in hand. Applause echoed. Her voice filled the hall, smooth and rehearsed. "Thank you all for joining us tonight. When I started this company, I had nothing but faith, family, and hard work. My sister, Lena, has been such a help. She's proof that family keeps us grounded." Her eyes found mine across the crowd. The audience clapped warmly, believing every word. Then it began. A murmur rippled through the room as phones started to buzz. A man in the second row frowned down at his screen. A woman gasped quietly. Another guest leaned toward Marshall, showing him something on her phone. Renee paused mid-sentence, confused by the sudden shift. "Is everything all right?" she asked, forcing a smile. The murmuring grew louder. Someone whispered, "Fraud, fake invoices." Cameras started flashing, not for praise but for scandal. Marshall's face drained of color. He yanked his phone from his pocket, scrolling furiously. Renee's hands trembled. I stood at the back, still, composed, watching her perfect world unravel under the soft glow of chandelier light. Her voice cracked. There must be some mistake. But everyone had already seen the truth. The room dissolved into confusion. Waiters froze mid-step, and the low hum of conversation swelled into a storm of whispers. Guests turned in their chairs, faces lit by the blue glow of their phone. The words they murmured carried sharp edges: fraud, fake charity, embezzlement. Each one hit like a hammer against the polished image Renee had built. She stood frozen under the stage lights, the microphone still in her hand. Her practiced smile faltered as Marshall grabbed her arm and hissed something too low for anyone else to hear. His face was tight, red at the edges. "What's going on?" she demanded, but he didn't answer. He was already scrolling through his phone, his jaw clenched. Then one of the sponsors, a man in a tailored navy suit, stepped forward. "Renee," he said sharply, "are you aware your company reported donations that never reached the foundation?" The color drained from her face. "That's ridiculous," she stammered. "We've always—" Another voice cut in. "Then how do you explain these invoices?" A woman held up her phone. "They're marked as paid, but the vendors never received a cent." The room erupted. Cameras flashed, people recording, murmuring. Marshall's expression hardened into something that wasn't shock anymore. It was anger. Real, seething anger. He turned to her. Is this true? She reached for his arm, panicked. Marshall, you know I'd never. He jerked away. Don't lie to me. In the chaos, I stood near the exit unnoticed. I didn't need to watch her crumble, but I couldn't look away. She'd always been so careful, so untouchable. Now she was surrounded by the same people who once lined up to praise her, their smiles replaced with disgust. Then Gareth appeared from the side of the room. He looked uneasy but determined. Everyone please, he said loudly, stepping forward. Before anyone starts pointing fingers, I'd like to clarify something. He held up a folder thick with papers. All the financial records, every false report, every doctored statement, were filed directly under Mrs. Voss's authorization. I have the original files right here. Renee's head snapped toward him. You're lying, she shouted. She made you do this. Her trembling hand pointed straight at me. My sister, she's behind this. Dozens of eyes turned my way. I met her gaze calmly. You really think I could fake your entire company's books? I asked softly. That's giving me too much credit, Renee. Gareth handed the folder to one of the board members. She's telling the truth, he said firmly. Lena had no access to these accounts until 2 weeks ago. I've verified every entry. Marshall looked between us, his fury now fixed on his wife. You dragged my name into this mess, he said through his teeth. You lied to everyone, including me. Renee tried to speak, but her voice broke. I did it for us. He cut her off. You did it for you. Reporters were already moving in, microphones out, flashes blinding. Renee stumbled off the stage, face streaked with tears, her perfect image cracking beyond repair. I turned toward the exit, where Eli waited by the door in his neat little shirt. He reached for my hand. Mom, are we leaving? I squeezed his fingers gently. Yeah, baby. We're done here. As we stepped outside, the night air hit my face, cool and clean. Behind us, the sounds of her empire falling echoed through the grand glass doors, the last applause she'd ever hear. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel like the shadow of someone else's story. I walked away with my head high, not because I'd destroyed her, but because I'd finally stopped letting her destroy me. Months slipped by quietly after the gala, like dust settling after a storm. The papers were filled with stories about the collapse of Voss events, each headline sharper than the last. Luxury planner accused of tax fraud. Charity scandal rocks city's elite. Renee's face, once on every society page, vanished from sight. The company folded within weeks, investors withdrew, and employees scattered to save themselves. I didn't celebrate. There was no satisfaction in watching a house burn, even when it was one built from lies. Still, a strange calm lived in me now, something I hadn't felt in years. Marshall filed for divorce before the ink on the last article had even dried. I heard it through Gareth, who still worked in accounting but now spent his evenings helping me draft business plans. He said Marshall had moved out of their mansion and into a rental near the river. He's not talking to anyone, Gareth told me. Seems like he finally realized what she really was. Renee's name became a quiet warning in business circles. People who once fought for her attention now avoided it. Her reputation, so carefully polished, had cracked beyond repair. Meanwhile, my days began to take shape again. Gareth and I rented a small space downtown. Nothing fancy, just a narrow storefront with peeling paint and a kitchen that smelled like hope. We called it Eli and Me Catering. The name made my son beam with pride when I showed him the sign. Work came slowly at first, birthdays, small office lunches, local weddings, but every order felt like a piece of myself stitched back together. Gareth handled the books, steady and honest, while I poured everything I had into the cooking. Some evenings, Eli would sit at the counter doing homework, his feet swinging as he waited for me to close up. One afternoon, near the end of summer, I was cleaning trays when the doorbell chimed. I turned and froze. Renee stood in the doorway. She looked smaller somehow, tired, thinner, eyes dulled. Gone was the expensive jewelry, the perfect hair. She clutched her purse like she needed something to hold her up. Lena, she said quietly, can we talk? I nodded toward a chair but didn't sit. I made mistakes, she began. Her voice trembled. I was proud. I hurt you. I hurt everyone. I didn't know how to stop pretending. I listened, silent. She twisted a tissue in her hands, waiting for me to offer comfort like I used to. But the part of me that once rushed to fix everything, that version of Lena was gone. I don't hate you, I said finally, but I don't need to forgive you to move on. Her eyes filled with tears. You won't even let me try? I shook my head. You already tried your way. Now I'm doing things mine. She lowered her gaze, nodded once, and walked out into the late afternoon light. I watched her go, not with anger, but peace. When I locked the door and turned back to the kitchen, Eli was there, waiting with 2 paper cups of lemonade. You okay, Mom? He asked. I smiled, taking one. Yeah, I said softly. Better than I've ever been. The years rolled forward gently, carrying me into a quieter life I'd built with my own hand. The little catering shop grew, bit by bit, until it became something people in town knew by name. I bought a small house with a wide porch and a yard big enough for Eli to shoot hoops after school. Time softened some things, but not my memory of where it all began. That dinner table years ago, and the woman who had tried to keep me beneath it. By the time Thanksgiving came around that year, the air outside smelled of wood smoke and maple leaves. The house was full of warmth and noise, friends, neighbors, and a few regular clients who had become something like family. Laughter spilled from the kitchen as I basted the turkey, the sound of Eli's deeper teenage voice mixing with the clatter of dishes. He'd grown tall, broad-shouldered, his hair always a mess no matter how many times I told him to comb it. "Mom, I got the pies out of the oven," he called, holding up 2 golden brown crusts with a grin. "Careful, they're hot," I said, taking them from him and setting them on the counter. "You did good, kid." The long table stretched across the dining room, covered in mismatched plates and hand-me-down silverware that somehow looked perfect together. Every dish smelled like home: roasted turkey, sweet potatoes, cornbread, green beans, and Eli's favorite cranberry sauce. Guests settled in, their laughter softening as we passed around platters. Someone raised a glass and said, "To Lena, for feeding us better than any restaurant in town." I laughed and thanked them, my cheeks warm. Between the clinking of glasses and the hum of voices, someone asked almost casually, "Do you ever hear from your sister anymore?" The room quieted for a heartbeat, just long enough for the question to land. I set down my fork and looked at the candlelight flickering across the table. Eli glanced at me, waiting. I smiled, not bitter, not sad, just calm. "No," I said, "but she taught me something important." "What's that?" the woman asked. I met her eyes and answered. She showed me what kind of woman I never want to be. There was no edge in my voice, only truth. The conversation moved on, the music started again, and the warmth in the room returned. Eli nudged my shoulder and whispered, "You okay?" "More than okay," I said, squeezing his hand. As the night deepened, I watched him joke with the guests, serving pie with that easy confidence I never had at his age. For a moment, I saw all the years between then and now, every fight, every heartbreak, every quiet victory stitched into the fabric of this simple evening. Outside, snow began to fall, soft and slow against the windows. Inside, the table glowed beneath the golden light. I lifted my glass, watching the reflection shimmer in the wine, and felt a quiet certainty settle in my chest. I had turned every humiliation into strength, every wound into wisdom. Revenge had come and gone, but freedom, that had stayed. Do you think I did the right thing by walking away from them, or should I have given them another chance? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.